To preface what I do, we have a podcast called the Dirt Talk Podcast. We've been doing it for about 3 years now, hundreds of episodes, interviewing people like Steve, executives down to laborers, operators, that kind of thing. So I'm basically gonna act like you're not here. I'm gonna do it like we typically do it. I'm gonna act like it's just you and me in the studio, having a conversation, and hopefully it's worth listening to. So to start out, I'm curious how you started out. Where did you start? What were your first jobs? What did that look like?
So, of course, my grandfather was in the construction business, started our company. My dad was in the business, and I was very close to my grandfather. And as a little kid, I would, he'd go up to Lake Chelan, and it'd be early in the morning, and he'd say, climb into bed, and we'll tell stories. And my grandfather was a great storyteller. So I'd be in bed and he'd be telling me about, going up in the mountains and, fishing and then, building a road up to a place that had never had a road before. And he talked with great pride in, working on dams, getting electricity to people that didn't have electricity, putting in irrigation canals so the farmers could grow their crops, building roads so they could get their crops to market. He was very, we heard earlier today about passion. Mm-hmm. He was passionate about building a country, building a community, building our country. And as a little boy, I just remember, listening and thinking, wow, that's really cool. It'd be really cool to be in an industry that we can go out and we can help people and build things. And so the truth is, I never made a conscious decision to go into the construction business. I just knew from my earliest thoughts that this is what I wanted to do. And so that was it.
Did you spend time as a kid on job sites?
My dad would fly me around, and all of our jobs at that time were on the mainland. And the nature of our company was we were headquartered in Wenatchee. There's very few jobs in Wenatchee, Washington. Yeah. The jobs were in Idaho, Montana, Oregon, more remote locations, mostly highways in those days. And so we would get in our little plane, we'd fly over to Montana, we'd land on the subgrade of the road that we were building, and we'd go out and we'd go, look around and see the guys and watch what was going on. And so, I was fortunate. I got to visit a lot of job sites. I was the co-pilot. So, I'd sit there and kind of watch the map. And in those days, you don't have Loran or any of that stuff. So you have a watch and you have a heading and you have a big old map. And I'd plot the course to where the job site was, and he'd find the subgrade and we'd land on it and go visit jobs.
That's amazing. What were your first jobs? Like, when did you start working?
So I started working, in those days, in Wenatchee, almost all the young people would go to work when they're, 14, 15 years old, working in the orchards. So I started out working in the orchards just like all my friends did, and picking cherries and thinning apples. And then when I turned 17, I could join the union. And so I joined the union, and I was a junior in high school, and went to work on a project we had in Wenatchee, doing some road relocation and some sidewalks and stuff. So, I was a laborer, so I got to go out there with all the other guys, and we had amazing crews, right? I mean, this business is really about the people in the field doing the work. I mean, that's the heart and soul of who we are. Yeah. And we had characters, they're just, they worked hard. They drank hard, they played hard, but every morning they were there and ready to go to work. So I, got to know a bunch of those guys in the crew. I worked the next year as a laborer as well. You make mistakes, and when you make mistakes, somebody's going to tell you about it, and you're going to pay for your mistake.
What was a notable mistake you made?
So at my second year, at one point they wanted me to become an equipment operator. Uh-huh. Okay, so they put me on a little hop tow, and they showed me how to use the excavator. And I'm back there, and they said, "Now just go over here and dig a trench." So I went over. I started digging a trench. all of a sudden a bunch of plastic started coming out of the hole. And the next thing you know, I had hit a live gas line. It just blew up. They literally evacuated one block of Wenatchee before the gas company could get out and repair the gas leak. So I was taken off of the hop tow. They then gave me a little like a 930 size loader. And my job was to just pick up the backfill material, lift it up over the top of the wall, dump it on the other side, spread it out, compact it. So I'm like, well, this is, so I'm just going along and I'm putting it in there until I didn't quite get the bucket up high enough, ran it into the brand new fresh concrete wall, and a chunk of wall about that big flops down into so then I'm off of the loader. So then they put me on a truck because they figured nobody can screw up a truck. So I'm in the truck, I've got an end dump, I've got to haul things down to the dump. I'm coming back, and there's one place in Wenatchee you've got to you go under the railroad tracks. So you've got to kind of go down, then you got to come back up. I got down fine, but I had a little trouble getting back up the other side. So after the truck was missing for about a half an hour, they finally sent somebody out and they found me, and then I'm out of the truck. So that ended my operating days. I had 3 chances and I was done. But probably my worst one is, so as a laborer, then they had me setting grade. And, Dale Moore, we just gave the Dale Moore Award away. So when I came to work for Dale, he said, okay, you're going to be my grade setter. Okay, now here are a big old bundle of stakes. And here is your hatchet to sharpen the stakes, beat them in the ground. Sure. At the end of this job, you're going to bring back and give me that hatchet. This hatchet belongs to the company. Okay, so you are the custodian of this hatchet, and you're going to bring it back at the end of the job. And if you ever lay it down, somebody's going to steal it. So you better hang on to it because, we're working in town and people around, they're going to take it. So I'm out there and I'm setting stakes. I lay it down, somebody steals it. So I go down, and I didn't say anything to anyone. I get in my car that night, I go down to Wells and Wade, and I look for hatchets that look like they're the same. And I finally buy a hatchet, I take it home, I beat it up, I nick it and scar it. And so I'm setting stakes. And every day we'd pour 300 feet of concrete sidewalk and curb and gutter. So one of my jobs was to lay the stakes and get the grader out, and we would grade 300 feet of sidewalk, 300 feet of curb and gutter. And every day the subcontractor, that was our deal, we had to have fresh, get it ready for him right before we left. So we go out, we do all that work. I'm getting in my car to leave. And Mickey Hewitt was my immediate foreman. And he comes and says, come here. I get in the car and I'm wondering what in the world I've done now. We get out there and he says, check that grade. And I'd set the whole thing 1/10 high. I'd made a mistake, and the entire subgrade is 1/10 high for 300 feet. He said, well, it's got to be ready by 7 o'clock in the morning. And he throws a shovel and a pick out on the ground and drives off. I'm out here. There is no way in a million years I would have been able to, but I'm picking, and about an hour later, he came by with the grader and knocked it down. But that's how you learn the business, right? Sure. It's just, it was really fun.
Did you ever question what you got yourself into?
Never. Like I say, I was really close with my grandpa, and his legacy was super important to me. That what he had started, I just felt it was really important to continue that legacy going forward. And, he was all about, as you heard on the award, he was all about the men and women that worked in the company. He recognized that, they're the ones that do all the work and many times don't get the credit that they deserve. And as you work in this business, and when you work out in the field and you get to know all of the men and women that work here, I mean, they're the best people in the world. Mm-hmm. They're the people that really do things. They're out there making it happen. And so the joy of my career has always been all of the great people I got to work with. And I never would have I can't imagine a better group of people. I mean, you're traveling around the construction industry now, and I know you see how special the people in this industry are.
Mm-hmm. Did you travel quite a bit when you were working?
I did in the beginning because, but eventually they wanted me to learn the business, the cost side of the business, understand the equipment, what does what. So I spent a year with our general superintendent just flying to different job sites, probably 10 different job sites with a stopwatch, sit up on the hill and time the scrapers and time the end dumps and time belly dumps and time shovels in those days, see how long does it take to fill this up with a shovel? What if you have a 3-yard bucket? What if you have a 5-yard bucket? What if you, have this size of a loader or that size of a loader? Different haul distances, trying to get what's the cost of all of these things. When is it better to use dozers? When is it better to use scrapers? So I spent a whole summer just visiting kind of what you talked about, just visiting job after job after job after job. And we always ran 2 shifts, so I would get out there and do the first shift, and then I'd stay for maybe 3 or 4 hours of the second shift to just see how things were going. But, just spend all that time just watching. You just watch and see what the people are doing.
It's amazing. You don't realize how much you pick up by watching until
it's huge.
You have an opportunity to recall it. You're like,
well, the other thing, because then I would go back, and part of my deal was how much per cubic yard did we spend that day or that shift, which then pretty soon you find out your cost per yard is less on swing shift than it is during the day shift. Because usually during the day shift, they'll kind of pull a piece of equipment here to go do something. At night, they don't. At night, they just keep it going. So, but if this cost $1.31, this cost $1.52, this one was 87 cents, I got to where, and I love numbers, so those numbers would stick in my head. And I could tell you exactly what it would cost for a 1,500-foot haul, a 2,500-foot haul, a 3,500-foot haul, what the grade was, keep your haul roads in good shape, all of the little things that it kind of takes ultimately to bid jobs and be able to be successful.
What were the jobs like back in the day?
We did heavy earth moving, and we were known for rock work. We always have done our own drilling and shooting, and we've always had, lots of big equipment. So we liked the jobs other people didn't want. We liked remote jobs. We'd like to have a job that we'd set up a camp, so that a lot of the companies, even today's the same way, a lot of companies, they don't want to leave home. And a lot of the employees today like to go home. And in those days, there was, in Wenatchee, we never had a job in Wenatchee. I mean, we were always on the road. So we were in remote locations, get a camp. My granddad would say the key to a great job is a great cook. Because if you had the best cook, you'd have the best crew. And if you got a good crew, you're going to have a good job. And, give them the tools that they need. But so it was, which is pretty cool too. And Lanai, I think, is probably similar right now over on Lanai because, these guys are living together and working together. And when you get a chance to live and work all as a team together, super special. You build relationships there that last a lifetime. Yeah. So I used to love to go out to those jobs. And the other thing is one of our core values is having fun. And you'd go, my granddad's, saying forever, if you have to go up and it's going to take 2 days on horseback to look at a job, take 3 days and your fly rod. And that was, so wherever I went, I'd take a fly rod.
No kidding.
Yeah. Wow. And after work, we'd find a little stream somewhere, you'd find a little lake, and you'd find a place to go fishing, or you'd find, something to do.
That's amazing. So have you always been at the family company?
Yes. Yeah, it was started by my grandfather and his 2 brothers in 1921.
So at what point did you start to realize that you would be the one taking things over?
I think that, I just kind of figured it was inevitable. Sooner or later, the rest of them were going to be gone, and I'd be the last one standing. It wasn't necessarily that I was qualified for it, but I'd probably be the only one around. So, no, I just always knew it's what I wanted to do. And, as my grandfather passed away on Maui. We were actually playing golf together. He passed away, and then my dad was involved. But my dad pretty much stayed on the mainland. So when we started up in Hawaii, and I moved there in 1975, I started the Hawaii operations, and so that was kind of my thing. Eventually, we closed down the operations on the mainland, and we only had Hawaii. Really? So the transition was pretty seamless that way.
What prompted the move to Hawaii?
We were called by Boeing. Boeing had started a construction company called BOCON, and they felt with their great government contacts that they could, start a construction company and do negotiated government work. And so here's your airplane, here's your military fighter jet, and now we're going to go build the airport you can land them in. And so, but Boeing wanted to come to Maui, and they were bidding the Kihei sewage treatment plant. And no Maui contractor would give them a quote for the excavation, for the roads, any of the structural X. So the locals in Maui did not want mainland contractors coming to Hawaii. And so they refused to give them a quote. So my dad called me, and I was in college at University of Washington, and he said, what would you think about going to Maui for the weekend and bidding a job? And I said, great, So we jumped on a plane, we flew to Maui, we bid a job with Boeing as their subcontractor. They got the job, we got the job. We threw a couple pieces of equipment on a barge. That was 1972, and during the fuel shortage, they filled the barge, ballast tanks, with diesel fuel.
Whoa.
Now, I don't know if we had the permit to do that. The guy that ran that department kind of had a philosophy of it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is permission. So I don't know. And that was Bud, who's one of our other Legacy Award honorees. But we got there. We had 200,000 gallons of fuel. We had our equipment. We had everything because we literally didn't know if we could buy anything on Maui. We didn't have a fuel allocation there.
Wow.
And fuel was on allocation. And we thought, well, what if we get there and we can't get diesel for the fuel?
So you took everything you needed?
We took everything, shovels, paint cans, everything.
Wow. And how'd that first job go?
It went well. It went a lot longer than it was supposed to. And maybe Dale Moore, another, our legacy honoree, was there, and he loved it. And but BOCON didn't have a good job, and it went on longer than it should have. But it was a good job. And then we had some equipment sitting in Hawaii. We didn't have any other jobs. And in 1975, I went back over and bid a job on the island of Molokai, and we were the low bidder on that job. And so I moved to Molokai for 6 months to build the job.
Wow.
And never came home.
So Hawaii, I guess, took off?
Yes.
And you decided to focus there rather than the mainland for a little bit?
Yeah. And, we're in a family business. Everybody that's in a family business knows everyone in the family is not always going to agree with everybody else in the family. And as you heard earlier today, maybe that, we didn't have an accounting system. We didn't have job cost reports. We didn't have all of the tools that are critical to be able to make good estimating, make good bids, and make money. And so the mainland was struggling greatly. And I thought those were very important tools. So by me being in Hawaii, I could pretty much create whatever I wanted to create as far as, tools to help us manage our work. And like all of us in this room, we build relationships, right? You do a job, you do a good job. The people want you to do another job, and then they tell their friends. And pretty soon we have one job, and then we have a few more, and then we get a few more. And so over time, we built a friendship network. We built a resume of successful jobs. And people kept calling, the phone would ring and they've got another job. And
So it wasn't adversarial because you were a contractor from the mainland. coming in.
The first thing, I give Dale Moore a huge amount of credit. The first thing Dale did is when we got to Molokai, he said, he went to the local unemployment agent. And of course, we're a union contractor. There's not a lot of union members living on the island of Molokai. But there were some, people that knew equipment. They worked in the plantations, they worked in agriculture. And so he went to the local unemployment people and said, look, and the union, and said, we want to hire all local people. Okay? And we'll get them in the union. Union agreed. But we want all local people. So we did. We had all local people. When we moved to Maui, we hired as many local people as we possibly could. So, I was from the mainland, but 40 of the other people that are in Goodfellow Brothers, they're all local.
Sure.
They all live here. They're aunties, uncles, cousins, nephews, everybody. They're all part of the fabric of the community. Yeah. And as you know, one of our core values is to give back to the community. So when you go to Molokai, you show up at the 4-H auction and you buy a steer. And, you show up at all the pageants and you show up at all the fundraisers and you get involved. And the other thing, when you go to a place like Molokai or you go to Maui or you go anywhere, is, people, it's the basic fundamentals of our whole value system as a company. Treat people with respect. Do what you say you're going to do. Tell the truth. Just basic things that we learn as children. And if you do those things, people will recognize that and they'll, come around and say, hey, this guy's okay. He's from the mainland, but he's okay. So,
Sure.
Over time, you just kind of keep giving back and give back and it works.
So was it a deliberate decision to then just focus on Hawaii?
Yeah. What happened is that, as you heard, the company was struggling on the mainland.
Yeah.
Okay, and a number of reasons, but we had some people from other companies come in leadership positions. My dad was basically pulling back and was trying to fill in the roles that he had. And the people that were coming were different cultures than ours was. And there was a big cultural conflict between the legacy employees that were out there doing it the way they've always done it, and the new management people coming in saying, we don't want you to do it that way anymore, now you got to do it this way. And it was a battle. And so my dad called and actually said he wanted me to come back to the mainland and to a board meeting. So I went back, and his recommendation was that I move back to the mainland and get involved in the mainland operations. And basically I said, look, in the last 7 years that I've been in Hawaii, we've made this much money. In the last 7 years I've been in Hawaii, you've lost this much money. Why would I leave here to come here? I don't think that makes sense. If anything, we should shut this down and get rid of the drain and let me go back to Hawaii and we'll make money. And he agreed. And that's
Really?
what we did.
Wow.
And it's one of those things when something isn't working, you just got to let go. You can't drag the whole company down with some operations that aren't working. And the amount of effort that would have had to have gone in to trying to change what was happening on the mainland would have been maybe beyond my skill set. It was, there's too many long-term employees, too many new people, just too much conflict. It would have been a nightmare of a job. But if you cut off that piece that, if you've got a limb, and I just had a friend that had lost his leg, but, if you cut off the leg, you can save the body, right? And so in this case, we just said, in my opinion, and it was what we did, we cut that off. And then we focused on a much smaller core group of people that we all shared the same philosophies. We all shared the same commitment to, improve everything we did every day. Is there a better way to do it? Is there a better way to bid jobs? Is there a better way to keep track of costs? Is there a better way to pay people? Is there a better way to, build jobs? Is there, so we had just had a really good group of young, fun people to work with. Some, Joe and Lane, and, we've got, some of them are still here. Now they're running their own regions. But back in those days, we were a small group of guys that just said, we're going to make this work. And we're going to work together.
Was it ever scary?
Oh, there were times when you can't get a bond for a $5 million job.
Yeah.
And you want to bid a job, and you got to get a job in order to stay in business, and you can't get a bond. Then you say, now what? But it's what you got to do is go find a job that doesn't need a bond, which is what we did. And I'll just say, because it's the job that we found that didn't need a bond was the Hyatt Waikoloa over on the Big Island. Chris Hemmeter was building the most expensive hotel ever built in the United States, maybe in the world. A $300 million hotel, 1,200 rooms, down in the lava fields of the Big Island. And so, I'm looking at this job, and we had a fellow named Scott Pingree, and that worked in our estimating department, and Jerry McLean. And so we spent a ton of time. We bid this job. Our job was only $10 million, but we're going to do all of the site work for the hotel. We're building dolphin ponds. We're building, canals for Venetian boats. We're building all of the underground stuff for all of the hotel. Now, we've got a $10 million site work contract, and they're going to put a $300 million hotel on top of our site work. That's a little scary, because if something cracks, they're going to come look at you, right? But we built that job, an outstanding team of people. It was a great job. Chris Hemmeter liked our work. He said, go to Kauai. I'm building 150-acre pond and 2 golf courses and another hotel. And we packed up and bought a bunch of scrapers, and we went to Kauai, and we started building those. We built 2 Jack Nicklaus golf courses there. We built the golf course over on the Big Island. That was Tom Weiskopf course. And now we're building golf courses. And all of a sudden the Japanese come, and they want to start building golf courses. And we built 20 golf courses in the next 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
We became the golf course building contractor. And Chad mentioned it earlier. He said, so did they ever say, have you ever built a golf course? Well, no. But, once we built one, then you can always say, yeah, we build golf courses. So we just kind of slowly built back up.
Were there any jobs that were just a total doozy?
Probably the one that we got this close to going out of business on was when I came back to the mainland to shut down the mainland operations. And the day I got there, they had bid a job for the Bureau of Reclamation up on the Canadian border. And it was an irrigation project, but you had to put pump stations into the Okanagan River, had to pump all the water up, put, I think it was, about 200 miles of irrigation pipe all around the place, going through, 500 farms and all this. We showed up in the job, and the Bureau of Reclamation had 30 people on the job when we towed our office trailer up to set up an office trailer. And we didn't have any workers, and they had 30 inspectors waiting for us. So previously, the Teton Dam had failed, and that was a Bureau of Reclamation job. There was always a lot of competition between the Bureau of Reclamation and the Corps of Engineers. Who gets to build the dams? Who gets to be the one in charge of these projects? And the Bureau of Reclamation dam failed. And so the Bureau of Reclamation felt like they were going to make sure they never had another failure on any contracts that they managed. And so they inspected us by 100 times. Wow. We got the 3rd phase of the job. The first 2 contractors went bankrupt. Yeah. And then we come along and bid the 3rd phase. I mean, I'm not saying this is the smartest thing that we ever did, but we got the job, and we survived. All I can say is that we survived, and the minute that job was done, we shut down all the mainland operations and went back to Hawaii.
Wow. When did you go back to the mainland?
Well, we came back, I think there was probably when Lane and Monty was probably the first time. So Lane Shinnick, who's here now and runs our Seattle operations, it was from the area and had wanted to move back there and did move back. And they contacted me and said, we really ought to open up an operation in Washington. And we would like to run the operation, he and Monty. And so he said, well, we'll give it a try. And I don't even know exactly what year it was. Lane, what year? 99. Yeah. So in 99, and they said, let's do it. So Joe, when did we start Oregon?
It was 96.
Oh, so actually Joe came first and went to Oregon. And we started in Oregon, and then we went up to Seattle.
Huh. So it would just happen naturally then.
Well, yeah, and both of these gentlemen, we worked together. They were part of that kind of inner core team of a very few of us that were just committed to building the company and trying to figure things out, right? We got to figure out how we're going to do this. And they're great leaders in their own right, and they saw the opportunities, and I basically just, said, okay, good luck.
Sure. At what point did you start a family?
Chad was born in 1980. I was married in 1975.
Oh, wow.
So my wife went with me to Molokai.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So great thing, honey. We just got married, and now we're going to move to Hawaii. Hawaii, she was pretty excited about. Molokai wasn't quite the same, So, and we had a house that was 13 miles out of town. And I had one company pickup truck, so she had no transportation. There's nobody out there. There's a few locals, but no, so she's 13 miles from town in the middle of nowhere, and I leave in the dark and come home in the dark, and welcome to Hawaii.
Yeah. Compared to how you were taught, how did you parent? We have a lot of challenges in our industry around being able to be home as much as you would like to and be a parent. The parent you would like to be, right? You get this picture in your mind of this parent that you want to be. And then you've got the challenges of the job and your clients and people calling and scheduling a vacation and canceling a vacation and wanting to go to the baseball game and then having something come up and missing the base, so it's hard. But you do the best you can. And the good news is that, Chad and Chelsea's mother was a full-time mom, and she was there full-time, for them and really spent a lot of time. My goal was to get home in time to tuck them in at night and tell them a story before bed. That was my goal, is to, spend some time and then be there, some of the weekends and do things together. Sure.
So.
Now, did they come out to job sites with you as they were growing up?
Chelsea never really was interested in going out on the job sites much. She would go and play golf and do fishing and other things. But
on
Chad
golf courses you had built?
Huh?
On golf courses you had built?
Yeah, some that we'd built. But Chad liked to go to the job sites, and the guys loved, having Chad out there. We have, like Bud, Mickey, Dale. They all love Chad. As far as, if he came on a job site, they would grab him and take him around and show him everything. And they really enjoyed having him come out.
Was your hope always to keep it a family business?
Probably yes. But at the same time, with Chad, we would talk. And I would say, you've got to create whatever life you want for yourself. And, you're capable of doing whatever you want to do, whatever feels good to you. He worked during the summers. He was a laborer. He was out in the ditches. He knew the guys and was working in the company. But I told him, and coming into a company business like this, you're inheriting a lot of people that you didn't hire. A lot of people could view you as the kid with the silver spoon in your mouth, and the only reason you got this job is because of your last name. There's going to be expectations on you that are greater than would be on somebody else because of your last name. It comes with baggage,
Sure.
right? And so be aware, if this is what you want to do, it isn't going to necessarily be easy. It could be actually a little more difficult than if you went out and did something else on your own. And I give Chad credit, because Chad, after he graduated, we had a talk, and he had traveled a little bit. And he came back and he said, I want to give it a year. I want to come back and work for a year and see how it feels. Mm-hmm. And I said, great. So he came back and he started running a job. He put together a crew because he didn't have a crew. And I just remember the little things. He came home and I said, so, how'd you get a crew? Well, so-and-so gave me a guy, and this guy gave me someone, and that guy down there gave me someone. I doubt if they were giving him their aces, right? So he's getting a few, people. So he sat them all down and he said, we're the all-star team. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're the all-stars. We come from all these other teams. Now we're building our team, and we're going to be the all-star team. Mm-hmm. We're going to be the best team. And they became that. So after about 9 months, he asked if I wanted to have lunch, and we had lunch. And he said, well, I made my decision. This is what I want to do. And I said, why? Why would you want to do this? He says, because I love the guys I work with. These are the people that I want to spend my time with. Mm-hmm. They're family oriented, they're hardworking, they give back to the community, they look after each other. These are the best people around. I want to be a part of this.
When did everything really start to grow? Because the Goodfellow today is not at all what it was probably even 20 years ago.
No, it's so philosophically, when you're in a small place like Hawaii, there's only so many clients that are there, and we had started working with just about every client that's there. Whatever the job was, we wanted to do it, right? And so when the work comes, you've got to grow, mm-hmm. because I didn't ever want to say no. If I built 4 jobs for you and you came to me for the 5th one, I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say absolutely. Don't worry about it. We got it covered. One of the good things is I could say that with complete confidence, even though I didn't know who it was that was going to be on that job. Mm-hmm. I had 100% confidence that our guys would rise to the occasion no matter what it was. They were going to do a good job. And so we would grow from, 30 million a year to 200 million in 2 years.
Wow.
And then the Japanese left and you go back to 50 million. Mm-hmm. But the good news was no new contractors were on Maui. When it went up to 200 million, we did it all. We still took care of all of our clients.
Yeah.
So when it went back down again, we still had our core clients, and we would take care of them. Huh. So we grew and we shrunk, and we grew and we shrunk. I think a lot of the growth has really happened though, since Chad became president. He became president about 10 years ago, mm-hmm. and started putting his team together. And at one point, probably, 4 or 5 years ago now, 3 or 4 years, or probably 7 or 8 years ago, he had an initiative to grow the company. And at that time, it was, we're going to do 500 million at 15%. And at the time he said that, I don't know what we were doing, maybe 250 something. And I looked at him and I said, are you crazy? I said, number one, in our business, I'd hate picking volume goals. Mm-hmm. Because I always think volume, I don't want estimators sitting there with, which we had one time, with a thermometer on the board saying we're going to get $200 million worth of work this year. And every time they got a job, they kept, raising it up to that. Yeah. Because they were more focused on getting the jobs than they were getting the margins, mm-hmm. right? And we got to make money. If we don't make money, volume is nothing, right? You got to make money. So Chad's thing I like, because it was 500 million at 15%. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was unreachable. And then they did it. They did it with California coming on board, which was huge for our company. I mean, it's huge. Bill and Brian and, John and Darren and Frank and all of the people, the Looper. I mean, there are so many great people that became a part of this family as a part of that acquisition. It was huge.
How did that acquisition even come about? Like, what were the first conversations?
We had a board member named Will Hill, and Will was with FMI, a large contracting, consulting group. And Bill called me up and he said, hey, I would recommend you guys take a look at Top Grade, a company down in California, very similar to your company, family-owned business, been around a long time, great values, take great care of their customers, good reputation, and I think you guys ought to go meet. He's a strategic guy. He felt that if we're going to be on the West Coast in Hawaii, we needed to include California. We couldn't just be in Washington, Oregon, and Hawaii. We needed California. And so he introduced us, and then we went down and met with Brian and Scott Blaine, who's here today, and started talking. And literally, Chad and I on the plane on the way down said, well, our chances of this happening are less than 5%. We'll go do it because we said we'd do it, and we'll listen. But I had opened up an office in California about 10 years earlier, and it was a disaster. It just didn't work. And so I was pretty hesitant to go back to California. But then we got down, we met with Brian and Scott that first trip, and started talking about values. And we really talked mostly about culture and values. And we had a lot of alignment there. And we, so that, and then eventually they said, well, we'll go talk to Bill. Because, and it just couldn't have worked out better.
Wow.
Yeah.
At what point were your values, when did they become defined? Was it largely unspoken for a long time?
Yes, yeah. I would say my grandfather would always talk about things like, remember who you are and what you stand for. Okay, that's just been a phrase that I grew up with, Danny grew up with, or all of our families. Remember who you are and what you stand for. And that comes from his family all the way from Scotland. Okay, and so he would talk about the importance of, always being honest, always doing what you say you're going to do. Your handshake is as good or better than a contract. He would talk about values all the time. So he would always talk about values.
Yeah.
But as far as really getting them defined, I think I give Chad and his team most of the credit for that. They have worked with Brian's, help and everybody to really recognize that as we grew, it was pretty easy to share those values when you're a smaller company and you can, everybody and you can talk about things. As we grow, how do you keep those values going out to a larger group of people in a very diverse geographic area? So we recognize the only way we're going to be able to do that is we've got to write them down, and we've got to start talking about them, and we've got to start sharing them.
What project over the years are you most proud of?
I think Hyatt Waikoloa would be right up there because it saved our ass. When you find that project that really, makes a difference. Sure. I would say, it's like we say your greatest strengths are your greatest weaknesses. Even though the Ellis Ford job was a horrible job and almost put us out of business, it was probably our greatest accomplishment to survive. So I would say that's right up there. We've had some fun jobs. Danny was involved with when we did the Kalapapa job, and Kalapapa is where they have the leper colony on the north shore of Molokai. There's no access, so you'd have to fly in the mornings, and bring everything comes in by barge, and we were running barges every day. But the people that had been down there, they were thrown off of ships, had to swim to shore. Father Damien set up a church down there in the middle of the leprosy. Colony. There's a lot of history there. Those same people were still there, and they would come out. We actually built bleachers so that they could come out and watch the work, and then one of them would bring a stopwatch, and he'd say, you should fire that guy in that truck. He's not keeping up. It takes him a minute longer than that guy. And but that was a cool job. That was just the people there made that real special.
Huh. How's the industry changed today versus even a few decades ago?
I think, like always, there's things that have improved. I mean, the emphasis on safety is huge. And our commitment to safety as it's developed over the last 20 years is, well, in my career, over the last almost 50 years now. I mean, it's from night and day. I mean, we went from a bunch of cowboys now to where, seriously, everybody looks out after everybody else. We've become a completely different company. So thank God that we aren't, that we aren't hurting as many people as we used to. Sure. The technology of, the GPS technology, modeling projects, being able to know, where you are while you're sitting in the seat of a piece of equipment and know where grade is and know where you are and what you're building, compared to, we'd always say, we hit grade once when we went by it going down, we hit grade again as when we were coming back up and went above it, and then we'd find it again, and we were good at hitting grade. We'd hit it 3 or 4 times before we finally got it done. But now, hopefully, we're getting a little better, and we can actually get out there and hit grade pretty consistently. Yeah. I think that, the technology and the, in the office side of things, being able to monitor what's going on in the field. As Chad was showing some of the new technology that we're going to be able to give to our project engineers and managers to be able to really keep track of everything that's happening in the field every day. That's huge, being able to really understand those things and know the numbers, right? We're a numbers game. The difference between, $1.50 a yard and $1.40 a yard. That's the difference between making money or not making money. That 10 cents a yard is everything. and so knowing, hey, if I can get one extra load or I can put in one extra piece of pipe, that's our profit. That's what we work for all day long. You're going to put in 20 pieces of pipe. Your profit is the 21st piece. You don't get that one in, you made no money today. The first 20 were just to break even. Sure. So getting that kind of information and getting it in the hands of the foremen and the crews, and it's I think we've got the ability to do much better. I see improvement, more improvements coming. I don't know. I think we've come a long way as an industry, but when you read the industry studies, they'll say that the construction industry is probably the lagging industry as far as overall change. Sure. Yeah.
What do you, looking ahead, what are you most excited about over the next few years?
I think what feels good to me, and maybe it's because, I was there when there was questions of whether or not this company was going to survive, right? What it was going to take. What really is gratifying to me now is the men and women that are working so diligently every day for the success of our company. And to see them be able to come into this industry at whatever level, at whatever position they come in, and to be able to grow and learn and take on more responsibility and, be able to have a bigger impact on where and grow their families, grow their future. That's exciting. So to me, what I get excited about is when I see meetings like this and the people that are here, and they're talking about growth. They're talking about, what are we going to do to be a little bit better next year than we were this year? What are we going to do to find a few more clients or a few more, types of work that we could do? And we're building a future. We're building our future, just like we build a job, one little brick at a time, and we never stop. And after 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years, you can build a lot, but it just, I'm a pretty firm believer in just take it easy, go slow, and do it right, and build the right people, the right systems, the right clients, and we'll take our time, and we'll just keep building.
Have you reflected upon being that old, like that, not you, the company?
Bill, come on.
The company, having a company that old, being, it's really the American dream. Have you reflected upon that? And what have you thought about?
I guess a little bit. We wrote a book at the 100-year anniversary, so I got very involved in doing, the history of the company, going back to, my grandfather's father leaving Scotland and coming, to America, and where he and his brothers grew up and did the whole thing. And that was really fun just to see, Teamsters were the guys that took care of the horses that they hooked onto a piece of equipment to drag it through the dirt, right?
Yeah.
There was no Caterpillar. We were here before Caterpillar was here. There wasn't no dozers. There wasn't any of that stuff. And so it's kind of cool, right? It's fun to reflect. But I also kind of feel like that's history. And yeah, let's bless it. Let's wrap our arms around it and give it a hug. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, it's not about what we've done in the past. It's about what we're going to do this year, what we're going to do in the future. And, I was third generation in our company. Chad is fourth generation. I like to think of Chad as first generation. He's the first generation, and all the people that are here right now are part of the first generation of this company. We're a new company. This company starts today, for our future. We got a great past. I'm proud of the past, and we should all celebrate that. But that isn't necessarily going to help us tomorrow when we go out there and we've got work to do, and we've got to keep building the company. We got to keep going forward. So,
what advice do you give to younger people?
Hang in there. Hang in there. Truly, I think one of the things that there's going to be ups and downs in our business. That's just the nature of the beast. There's going to be some bosses you have, and you're going to love them. And there's probably going to be some bosses you have that you're not going to be so happy with, okay? And there may be some jobs that you do, and you think, I don't really like this job very much. And then there's going to be something else you do, and you say, this is great, okay? In my career, I've had to do a lot of shitty jobs. They're not the ones you want to do. And if that's what you had to live off, and if you project into the future that that's what it's going to be like, I would have quit. So you got to know that it's going to change. If you're in a bad job, you're going to get a good job. And if you're on a super good job, well, you're probably going to get one that's not that good.
Yeah.
But over time, it's like I said, you build a career. You build it 1 year at a time, one step at a time. You may have some steps that weren't that much fun. And you may have some steps that were just great. Mm-hmm. But overall, you're building. You're building. It's like building your savings account. If you just keep putting a little money in every week, you're going to end up with a lot in the end. Yeah. And that's what I see in our business. It's just hang in there. Keep going forward. Keep contributing. Keep learning. Learn as much as you can. I told this story earlier. We had a wonderful guy that came to work for us years ago, Scott Kraft. He came to the job site and he said, I want to work for Goodfellow Brothers. I've heard of your company and this is where I want to work. And he said, we're not hiring right now. He says, you don't have to pay me. I just want to go to work. He said, well, we got to pay you. And he says, no, I don't care. I just want to work. I want to learn. I want to learn as much as I can. And said, okay, we'll pay you $8 an hour for a 40-hour week, and we're going to work you 80 hours, but it's a salary, so you don't get any overtime. Great. And he goes to work. And literally, he would work 60 or 70 hours a week because he wanted to learn the business as quickly as possible. And I was kind of the same way. Once I got into the business, the quicker and the more I could learn, the sooner, the happier I was. And if that meant that if I work 40-hour weeks, it's going to take me this long, but if I work 60-hour weeks, I can get it this much faster, then that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn as much as I could, as fast as I can. The more you learn, the better you get at it, the more fun you have with it.
So what's next for you?
Who knows? I'll listen, see what Chad has in store for me. I love I love the business, right? I'll always love the business. I like to share if I can help anyone. I always would like to, if someone had a question, I'm happy to answer a question. I'm happy to talk about anything that I think might help someone. So I think at one point I asked Chad, so how do you see this working? And he said, well, Dad, I look at you as the guy in the bullpen, okay? If I need your help, I'll call the bullpen. If otherwise, I'm in the bullpen. So I'm still in the bullpen. I'm there if somebody wants me, but that's kind of the way I do it.
Is there a question you've been asked more than others?
I don't know. I can't think of one question that.
Sure.
No, not really.
Yeah, stumped you, huh?
Nobody wants to ask me anything, I guess.
Yeah, you weren't kidding, huh?
Yeah.
Well, excellent. I think we're somewhat. Where's the? How's time? Yeah, all done. I really enjoyed
Good. Yeah,
talking
good
with you.
pleasure.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah.
Did you guys enjoy it? Yeah. Excellent. Well, if anybody has any questions, he's over here. I mean, there's cobwebs on him. No one's taking advantage of it, so I'd get on that if I were you. Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Hey, thanks a lot.